All right. Welcome to episode number 2 of the New Resilience podcast.
Two.
Welcome, Tom.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for being here. This is a podcast where we are trying to share the wisdom, share the knowledge that veterans like you have gathered over the years, decades of being in the industry, and just really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. Decades, huh?
Yeah. Is it what? What are you, 30 now? Wait,
Yeah, that's right.
21?
I
Turning
love that.
31?
Right.
Yeah. All right. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Tom, for again, very few people might know this, is what we call the OG of New Resilience. One of the first people who was kind of like the godfather, took us under his wing,
Oh,
so to say. So,
yeah. Oh,
we will always be grateful to you. Do you want to talk about like a short stint of how we met?
yeah. This is remarkable. In the same way that when I started,
Mhm.
a gentleman named David Nissen kind of took me under his
We
wing.
might
You
know
might
this,
know
we
him,
did.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And Tom
yeah,
Mazel and others just were really
yeah,
kind to me,
yeah.
and I really am grateful for that. And so when you walked into Partners in Treatment conference in Scottsdale, you were new. You came in from San Francisco area with
Mhm.
AI wisdom,
Outpatient. Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
and you were playing ping pong in
Yep.
120-degree heat, and I thought something's wrong here. Although we did have a party outdoors at 5 o'clock in the heat.
Yeah,
This year the
yeah.
conference it'll be like later at night.
Ping pong then, till then, on that day before meeting you was the highlight of the day,
It well,
just so
you
you know.
you all just seemed like you know you needed a little hello. So I
What's
said,
going
I
on?
said, hello,
Yeah,
would you like to meet the rest of us at the conference? I
sure.
think we found an exhibit table for you. And you won the hearts of the conference. And, the conference goers, I think of all the exhibitors, having someone who understands kind of the technical side of what we do,
Hmm.
the AI side,
Hmm.
and a lot of people were speaking with you, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
introduced you to a lot of our friends. Like, wow, if you could really bring this into our
yeah.
industry, wouldn't that be cool? Anyway, so then I got to know you guys, and when my mother was ill, you came and visited me, and I'll always remember that. I needed friends, and you guys became really quick friends, and I appreciate that. So I'll always remember that.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
thank you for saying that. It's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
So for everyone out there, we do talk about life and stories. So
Mm.
do you want to like sort of talk about how you got started in the industry? What drew you to it? Sounds-
Wow. Well, a long, long time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
So I
So we're
actually
talking 18,
the
50
1820, yeah,
years? All
it
right,
was
yeah.
related to I think the Pilgrim, but actually what happened
Yeah.
was I really I never thought I was going to be in mental health.
Hmm.
I was going to be a talent agent, you see.
For actors,
Yeah,
musicians?
yeah, people in the
I've
industry.
heard you sing. I don't know,
No,
maybe.
no, that wasn't for me. It was
Okay.
for other people.
Okay.
I I've always wanted to do that. I always wanted to assist other people in being successful,
Mm.
especially in the arts. And so
Hmm.
that was kind of my goal. So I spent a lot of years like working in dinner theater and event planning and marketing, public relations. Um, and then I had this experience working as a chaplain intern, and my life was radically changed for
This
some.
was in Ohio? Where was this?
Yeah, and this was in Cincinnati
Hmm.
at Christ Hospital.
Hmm.
And so I spent a whole summer working as an intern, chaplain intern on intensive care unit, and then ended up in seminary, and then ended up in a master's in social work program.
Was that an intense experience in the I?
Oh goodness, yeah, intense.
Okay.
Yeah. The
Do you talk about it? Do you not talk about it?
I haven't talked about it much because um, it was so intense, and
Mm.
people, lots of my patients passed.
Mm.
It just was one of those times where a part of me also passed away and a new part came up, rose up.
Wow.
So I really wanted to do more work around, I guess, social work,
Mm.
theological work, something deeper and more profound,
Mm.
which was exactly opposite of what I thought I was going to do with, representing talent.
Mm.
So
Oh yeah, I forgot about the talent.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
that was like a whole radically different thing. So I started doing therapy
Mm-hmm.
in rural Kentucky.
So you trained to be a
Yeah, I got my
therapist?
master's in social work and still have an independent licensure, and I'm ordained in two denominations. So I was kind of putting it all together.
Yeah.
Um, and so recently someone said to me, you're an agent for families and people seeking
All right. So it's the
care.
perfect marriage of like what you set out to do
Maybe
and
so. Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good thing.
yeah.
So anyway, that's how it all kind of happened. And then one day I heard about Lindner Center of Hope building this
Mm.
like freestanding psych hospital, the newest in North America.
This is cut to 1940, like we talking 2000, like
This was in 1820. No, yeah, no. Anyway, so I interviewed, and there I was at Lindner Center of Hope, and that was I think I just celebrated 15 years with Lindner Center.
wow.
So
So you're at OG
OG,
for new resilience, or you're OG at Lindner
yeah,
Center?
and what's fascinating is I'm doing like clinical outreach,
Right.
but during COVID, I was able to be on the chaplaincy team.
Hmm.
And I was able to write 5 books on theological issues, which was really, really, really neat.
So
So
you've written 5 books already.
yeah, they were called Backyard Reflections: A Novel Pandemic Journey.
Hmm.
I wrote like daily inspirations
What's your
about
process like? Did you sit down like one day and just like run
well,
through it, or?
well. So my process was I wasn't on Delta every day.
Hmm.
I was COVID stranded,
Right, right.
and I was sitting at my home and realizing we had chipmunks
Huh.
and birds and squirrels, and they weren't affected by COVID.
Right. They
Um,
had their social life, they were mingling.
and they were never ill.
Yeah.
And so during COVID, I found myself reconnecting with nature. A good friend of mine, interventionist from Los Angeles, said during COVID, keep your feet anchored to the ground,
Hmm.
stay connected to creation, and you'll make it through. And so I was in my backyard often, just communing with creation.
Right.
So I started writing about just the experience with nature, because I had sadly I had become a Delta traveler,
Yeah.
and I was far from nature. I was in Delta clubs, and so it was a good experience to be reconnected. And then COVID ended, and as soon as COVID ended, I was back on the road. And, my first flight, I'll never forget. I forgot to put my seatbelt on,
Oh,
and
yes.
they're like, seat 6B, please put your seatbelt on. The pilot will not take off. I'm like, what an idiot. Oops, that's me. So I learned how to go fly all over again,
Yeah.
and back in the rat race, but still connected to, I mean, remembering the time I was connected to creation. And so I think that did inspire me.
Hmm.
As I could just remember, okay, those were times of taking a deep breath and,
Hmm.
enjoying what's around me. It
Yeah.
helps me to help other people better. So anyway,
And these were like reflections of like past years, or like, do you continue to
yeah.
find time for that? I know you have very
So,
busy schedules.
well, so what happened then was a couple of years ago, a very good friend, Denise Klein from Milestones Ranch, called me and said, I hear you've written books, which I want to write a play on codependency. So I wrote the
Hmm.
play.
Hmm.
So I think writing's fun.
Hmm.
And then last year I was on this in this program called Dancing for the Stars in Cincinnati, raising money for the arts.
Dancing for the Stars,
It was
dancing
a
for the.
local one, but
Okay.
it was horrible. I was horrible. There were 1,000
So
people.
there are videos of these online.
Yeah, I don't think so. No, they've been erased. Oh, it was disco. It was really interesting. And so, anyways, and I wrote a song for the play on
Yeah.
codependency.
Yeah.
Come to find out I'm codependent. Who would know? Anyway,
Couldn't have guessed.
yeah, who could have guessed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy that rescues the two newcomers to
Yeah.
the pit conference, of course, codependent, right? Yeah. So,
All right. Do you think, Tom, your experience as a clinician sort of makes a difference in how you approach? Because like, you're
yeah,
more on the outreach side, you're trying to like connect with people.
yeah. When I talk to families, especially during COVID, I really kind of grasp their grief.
Hmm.
Now, they didn't ask me, "Are you grieving?"
Hmm. Right.
They couldn't, but I was on the phone, most of the day and night talking to people who were really struggling.
Right. Right.
And instead of asking clinical questions, I would ask, so how you really doing? Are you
Mm-hmm.
grieving? And they would just start crying. Like no one asked that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of going into my clinical mode, I think I maybe went into my chaplaincy mode.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, chaplaincy training was all about listening.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which is an important part of,
really important.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I would do is, I would ask people, how are you really doing? And they would say, no one's ever asked me that.
Mm.
And so that made a huge difference during COVID. And I kept that question going even since COVID. And I guess it's a clinical
Yeah.
a thing too.
Does it lend more authenticity to like when you're talking to clinicians too, like a lot?
mm,
So then, because we've heard that a
yeah,
lot where outreach, when you start out outreach
yeah,
with not a lot of clinical experience,
sure.
that credibility is sometimes,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've
Yeah.
experienced
That's
that.
a good question. I think clinicians want to be heard too.
Yeah.
I think they are so often marketed upon
Yeah.
versus heard.
Yeah.
And they're, by the way, grieving too.
Sure.
And their lives are tough working with,
Yeah.
complex families and
You're just absorbing and
complex
absorbing.
patients.
Yeah.
But I've helped, I think, oftentimes families with levels of care.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the mental health field looks like chaos, the Wild West.
Hmm.
And so I've
Why
always,
is that?
because I think you can Google yourself into a tailspin or the rabbit hole.
WebMD and
Yeah,
everything.
or just Google
Yeah.
it. You
Yeah.
Google whatever you want to
Yeah.
Google, and there's a pretty picture. Like, oh, that sounds good.
Yeah. Oh.
They have ponies, and you find yourself, making your decision based
Yeah.
upon a pretty website versus like, what is a level of care? You
Right.
break your leg, you are told your level of care. You have
Hmm.
heart surgery, you're told your
Yeah.
level of care.
Yeah.
You go into mental health and addiction kind
Right.
of journey.
That is true.
Wow, it's just complicated. So I've
Yeah.
been a navigator too.
Right.
So that's probably equal to listening
Yeah.
to someone's grief is now, can I help you sort out?
So you're
Often,
thinking about the family, or you're not just thinking linear
yeah.
center. You're thinking like,
Here's what I
right.
imagine. I imagine the poor person on the other side of on the other end of the phone with a big yellow pad with all these notes and all these programs and all this research, and they're saying, I am so confused. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So I try to work the family through that process
Hmm.
once I kind of gain trust.
How do you manage all of that? You have so much information to like sort of deal with, and like,
It doesn't matter so much what they wrote down. What matters is for me to kind of, I think, explain levels of care.
hmm.
So people don't really understand that in mental health. So I feel like that's part of my job is to kind of assess what level they need. If they need lender center, great. If they don't need
Awesome.
lender center, then I help from there. And I think they probably listening. That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, though, in marketing will just tell what we do as an organization we sell
Mm-hmm.
without listening first.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I often listened for resources like, financial resources and patience and all kinds of,
Yeah.
reasons a person would want to go to treatment. I try to listen to that.
Yeah.
Um,
Talking about listening and like
Yeah.
lessons, right? So like you've been in, again, you've industry veteran, like you've seen
Mhm.
things sort of grow, and you've been in the outreach world.
Yeah.
I think Steve, who was on our
Yeah.
earlier podcast, he said that if you're in mental health or behavioral health, and if you don't know Tom Parker, and if you're in outreach, you're not doing outreach.
Oh, that's nice.
That
I've
was
watched
that was verbatim what he said.
I watched
So,
that podcast. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So like again, a lot of people who might be watching or listening right now might be people who are just starting out their outreach journey, right? So there's so many things to consider, like you said, levels of care, how to assist.
Sure.
How does one start thinking about like their role, growth?
So at the upcoming Partners in Treatment conference, we're doing a workshop on the principles of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, I entitled it the spiritual DNA of marketing, but that sounded maybe, I don't know, too much.
Sure. Yeah.
But it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
With my chaplaincy background. I believe someone said one time to me, you love people into treatment, you love people through treatment, and you love people beyond treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a spiritual thing. If you can have that perspective and understand, transference and countertransference issues, you'll be able to do that. That because you can't learn the techniques of marketing if you don't have a heart for people.
Sure.
So that's
And
one
this is
thing.
families, this is
Fa-
the organizations that you work with, everyone.
Absolutely. It's interesting because one of the slides I have in the PowerPoint for this training is, families, referrers, patients, colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to conferences where I don't feel loved because they're so complicated and big and everyone's moving so fast. And,
Mm-hmm.
someone gets invited to a special dinner and someone doesn't. It's always,
Transactional? Is that it?
I think so. I mean, I think relational is what we're looking for in marketing outreach is, although we need transactional. I mean, we need
Mm-hmm.
um, data, and
Sure. Yeah.
we need statistics, and we need to prove our
Mm-hmm.
that we're
Like what's working, what's not
right.
working, what's the return, I
Yeah.
guess.
But we have a slide in our PowerPoint on a marketing
We
presentation.
should probably share that at some point if you
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the slide says, do you know your organization's mission and vision statements?
Mm-hmm.
And can you, at the end of the week, when you're collecting the data on how many calls did you make and, how many emails did you send?
Which
And
is important,
it's very important.
but it's not the whole picture.
No, because what if you did all that without relaying your passion for your organization?
Sure.
Um, I think every week I think the more I think about this,
Yeah.
that the data is important. I have to do reports every week, but what I'm adding is, how did I meet the mission of our organization of Lender Center this week?
Yeah.
And how did I best use my gifts?
Yeah.
I think it's a really great way to, because I could make 150 sales calls
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and not be real
Sure.
and get nothing.
Yeah.
Or I can make five really good
Yeah.
connections and share the mission of Lender Center of Hope and
Yeah.
express my passion
Yeah.
and my gifts, and then that might work. So I'm trying to balance the two, the
Sure.
relational.
I mean, that's where we think something like Neo could help out too, because again,
Yeah.
what we try to do is like make it easy for you to log these things and see what kind of themes are emerging in the conversations that you do, and then are you able to bring forward, especially like for you, it might be super easy, but for people who are starting out, just to see what kind of themes are emerging, and are they able to express or put forward the mission or the principles of the organization forward.
And what I like about this CRM is
Yeah.
that at the end of the week, as I pull my report off,
Yeah.
I can then speak into my
Yeah.
phone and answer the questions. How did I best
Yeah.
convey the mission of Lindner Center, and how can I best convey
Mhm.
the way I use my gifts?
Sure.
I can speak that in, and
Yeah.
that at least, okay, that's
Yep.
the week, and I can listen to it later and say,
That's
what does that
yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
well, I think it's a great idea. So it's a balance between the transactional and relational.
Yeah.
That's something we're going to talk about at this marketing
Yeah.
workshop.
The other thing that comes to mind is again something that we go into often is how are things changing? Like the industry changes so often, right? Like the levels of care change,
mm,
payment models change, insurances are coming up. How does that change the way you approach outreach? Is it becoming more and more important to sort of like, target the right sources, go to the right conferences, think about what's working?
and so back to the presentation, one of our slides is, you how you balance
Mm-hmm.
your resources. So it's all based upon
Sure.
budget and time,
Mm-hmm.
and then how you look at these concentric circles of outreach.
Mm-hmm.
It always the best outreach is from within to without. And so you instead of saying I'm going to pick this conference because it's in a great location and they've
Mm-hmm.
got great weather. No, I'm going to pick conferences and locations, places to visit based upon what makes sense to my budget and what makes sense to this growing
Like
a
you're talking about
program.
the actual geography of.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so
okay.
it's an inside out thing because um most programs, at least half of their business comes from a geographic area of
Sure.
a day drive time.
Yeah.
So that's got to be really clear.
Yeah.
It's going to probably shock people at the conference when I talk about that because everyone loves to pick the favorite
Yeah.
conference. Um, and I think in these times, another really great thing to think about, part of our PowerPoint is the balance between the big net marketing and strategic marketing.
Hmm.
Like what's your percentage? Like how, if you go to a conference and you're throwing the net out and you're
Mm.
doing marketing to everybody because we do have endorsers of what
Sure.
we do,
Yeah.
but the specific referrers, how much time do I spend with those people?
Yeah.
And it really is a
And these are
balancing
like
act.
very strong relationships that you're
Yeah,
trying to build out.
yeah. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's really important and something to think about.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
is it
I think
50-50?
that's a
Is it
great tip.
75-25? I like, and by the way, you'll like this. So the opening slide of our presentation on marketing in tough times like today,
Yeah.
lots of competition and
Yeah.
lots more complex comorbid patients and you know difficult families.
Mm-hmm.
The one slide we asked the marketers who are training the workshop is, are you a C-list, a B-list, or an A-list marketer? The C-list marketer is what up?
Is there someone who says yes to their C-list?
They're gonna go, I don't do that.
Yeah.
And a B-list marketer is, let me tell you everything I know about my
Yeah.
program. And an A-list marketer is, tell me about you.
Yeah.
And it goes back to those chaplaincy skills of actively listening. When I was visiting patients in the hospital, I would say, how are you doing?
Mm.
You know, what's going on with your
Which sounds very simple, but you're saying not everyone does it.
active list? Oh, it's horribly difficult. We
Yeah.
want to solve problems without
Yeah.
listening first. I think really good marketers just listen
Yeah.
and
Yeah. I guess like one thing that we do want to ask you is like, what are you excited about, like for the future of the industry? Like when you think about outreach, people who are joining in, because everyone comes in like where I think it's deeply meaningful to them that they're coming in for. So, what's something that you're excited about?
I think a lot of people coming into our industry now as marketers have experienced addiction or mental illness, and they're much more able to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's exciting
Mm-hmm.
because they're coming in with a much more vulnerable
Sure. Personal
approach.
experience.
I think it's really
Yeah.
really exciting, and that's I think for me though,
Mm-hmm.
my perspective is I love using my giftedness. So like I love now using my creativity along with my relationship building
Mm-hmm.
and kind of putting it all together
Mm-hmm.
and being bold about it. You
Right.
know, because I think oftentimes we market without creativity.
Mm-hmm.
We market without our unique way of being. And I think the more authentic we are about marketing, we tell our clients, be your best self.
Yeah.
But oftentimes marketers do the same old things over and over and over and
Yeah.
over, and they wonder why it doesn't work.
Right.
One of our PowerPoint slides is, you know, as an outreach person, consider how you can give something of yourself to your colleagues, your families, your patients. And one of my friends will look at her female counterparts and she'll assess their colors, and then she'll make necklaces and mail them to them.
Wow.
Neat? Like
Yeah.
it's such a
It's
personal,
very personal. You
very
can't
like why
forget
not?
that. Yeah.
Like why not? You know, another one of my friends will always say a blessing to people before he leaves. So like one of our slides says, what is your PS? What is your postscriptum? The best read part of any letter or of any email is PS.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most remembered part of when we leave a conversation.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to always leave with something empowering and positive
Okay.
when I leave a conversation. And that it's not always easy.
Yeah.
Um,
Has to be situational. You can't stick to the same thing.
and unique to each person too, but I want everybody to remember me when I leave as I said something that was positive or good or faithful or encouraging.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, and by the way, one of my slides says, you know, humor helps.
Yeah.
So I will say that sometimes as an industry today, more than years ago, humor is part of it. We're able to laugh more now.
Yeah.
When I first started, it was like, you know, you're in mental health, you're in a library.
It's a very serious job.
You know, the librarian will tell you to be
Yeah.
quiet. Now let's laugh. Let's enjoy respectfully, you know, have some good times and smile. And our play we just, you know, we're going to be doing in LA again is called So How You
Can
Doing?
people attend that? Like,
Well, our industry for sure.
Yeah.
We love our industry to be there because we need a break. And
yeah.
the play is called So How You Doing? A playful play on codependency, written by, directed by, acted by, and attended by codependent types and those in denial. Fun, right?
Yeah.
It's good to laugh.
It's humor.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good to just throw it out there and respectfully.
Yeah.
have humor. So that's
Yeah.
something I've learned over the years that it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any parting wisdom for like folks who are new that
Oh gosh, I think just reach out to the people who've been around for a while, and
mm-hmm.
there was a gentleman named Bill Lane who was in our industry for years, and he would sit in the outside of a conference in the couch in the lobby,
Mm-hmm.
and he would have home room
Hmm.
in the midst of middle school dance. I sometimes liken conferences and our gatherings as middle school dance because we as humans tend to have a tendency of grouping together
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sometimes excluding. Bill Lane, God rest his soul, would always bring the newcomers into the
That's what
lobby.
you do. Yeah,
I
that's what you did
try,
it
I
with us.
try,
Yeah.
and so I love that we would
Yeah.
remember that the people coming into the industry need a
Yeah.
little bit of love. And
So pay it forward.
loving them in, paying forward, yeah, loving them in, loving them through, and loving them all. So
That's a beautiful message.
thanks. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, Tal.